You get dressed every morning without thinking about it. You choose a shirt, you choose shoes, maybe you check the mirror twice. But the real answer to why you do this is far stranger than fashion. It starts almost 200,000 years ago, not with vanity, with ice. Your ancestors were losing their body hair. Slowly, over millions of years, their skin became bare, good for sweating, terrible for surviving a cold night. So they needed something new. They needed a second skin. Archaeologist Ian Gilligan has spent years studying exactly when and why clothing began. His research points to something surprising. Clothing wasn't invented once. It was invented at least twice. First as a simple wrap thrown over the shoulders to survive brutal cold snaps. Then, much later, as something else entirely. Something tailored, something fitted to the body. That second invention changed everything. How do scientists even know when clothing began? Humans didn't leave behind ancient t-shirts. Fabric rots. Fur disintegrates. There's no fossil record for a coat. So researchers turned to something you'd never expect. Lice. Geneticist Mark Stoneking, along with researcher Ralph Kittler, studied human body lice. Body lice are different from head lice. They can only survive in clothing, not on skin, not in hair, in fabric. By tracing the genetic split between head lice and body lice, they could estimate when humans started wearing something regularly enough for a new species of insect to evolve around it. Their answer? Somewhere around 170,000 years ago. Think about that for a second. An insect's DNA became a time capsule for human clothing. At first, clothing was survival, nothing more. A mammoth hide wrapped around the shoulders, a stitched scrap of fur tied at the waist. Function, not fashion. But something started happening once. Clothing became reliable. Once it stopped being a matter of life or death every single day. People started decorating it. Excavations at sites in Russia, dating back roughly 30,000 years, have uncovered ivory beads, hundreds of them, found in careful rows, as if they had once been sewn onto clothing, not scattered randomly, placed deliberately. Why would a hunter-gatherer, spending most of the day finding food and avoiding predators, spend hours carving tiny beads from ivory? Here's the twist. The beads weren't about warmth, they were about being seen in small hunter-gatherer bands. Everyone knew everyone. There was no anonymity, no strangers passing on the street. Every decision you made, every risk you took, every resource you shared was witnessed by the same 20 or 30 people for your entire life. In a group like that, reputation isn't a nice bonus, it's currency. It determines who you can trust, who will share meat with you during a bad season, who will fight beside you, who will choose you as a partner. And clothing became one of the fastest ways to broadcast information about yourself before you even opened your mouth. A necklace made from rare shells didn't just look nice, it said something. It said, I have connections, I traded with people far from here, I have access to resources you don't. A cloak dyed with a difficult time-consuming pigment said something too. It said, I have time to spare. I'm not just surviving, I'm thriving. This is where the story takes its sharpest turn, because what looks like decoration is actually a signal, a costly signal. There's a concept in evolutionary biology called the handicap principle, developed by biologist Amos Zahavi. It explains why animals display traits that seem wasteful. A peacock's tail doesn't help it survive. It makes it slower, more visible to predators. But that's the point. Only a truly strong, healthy peacock could afford to survive while dragging around something so impractical. Human status clothing works the same way. Impractical, resource-heavy adornment isn't a flaw. It's the whole message. Anyone can wear something functional. Only someone with surplus time, surplus resources, or surplus skill can afford something elaborate. Does this sound familiar yet? Fast forward past the Ice Age, past early farming villages, past the first cities. The specific materials changed constantly. Purple dye in ancient Rome, made from thousands of crushed sea snails, became so expensive that only emperors could legally wear it. Silk, carried thousands of miles along trade routes into Europe, was once worth more than gold by weight. Different centuries, different fabrics, same underlying signal. This person has access to something rare. This person matters. Economist and sociologist Thorstein Veblen gave this behavior a name in 1899. He called it conspicuous consumption, spending resources not for utility, but specifically so others can witness the spending. Veblen was writing about wealthy industrialists in tailored suits, but he was really describing something that started with ivory beads on the freezing plains of Ice Age Russia. Here's what makes this uncomfortable to sit with. You probably think your style choices are personal, an expression of who you really are. And in some ways they are. But underneath that, the same ancient machinery is still running. Your brain, without asking your permission, is constantly reading clothing as data. A crisp blazer, worn-out sneakers with a designer logo, a particular brand of watch. You register these signals in less than a second, long before you consciously decide what you think of the person wearing them. And when you get dressed in the morning, some quiet part of your brain is still asking the same question a hunter-gatherer asked 30,000 years ago. What do I want people to believe about me today? There's a particularly strange piece of research that shows how deep this goes. Psychologists have studied what's sometimes called enclothed cognition, the idea that clothing doesn't just signal something to other people. It changes how you think about yourself. In studies led by researcher Hajo Adam, people performing tasks while wearing a lab coat they believed belonged to a doctor showed improved focus and attention compared to people wearing the exact same coat when told it was a painter's smock. Same fabric, same cut, different meaning, different effect on the brain wearing it. Clothing isn't just read by others, it's read by you. So why do you still care what you're wearing today, even scrolling through an app, even video calling from your kitchen? Because for 170,000 years, the humans who paid attention to how they were perceived tended to survive better, trade better, and reproduce more successfully than the ones who didn't. That pressure never disappeared. It just changed clothes. The beads have been replaced by sneaker drops and logos. The rare purple dye has been replaced by limited releases and price tags. The audience isn't 30 people around a fire anymore, it's potentially millions of strangers online. But the underlying question, the one etched into your nervous system by evolution, hasn't changed at all. What does this say about me? You get dressed every morning without thinking about it. But somewhere underneath that automatic choice is 170,000 years of survival, status, and the very human need to be seen.